did not see a teacher coming by. Suddenly she turned around, put us on the wall, said Heil Hitler, and 3 of them said Heil Hitler and I didn't. So she said, what's the matter? I said, I'm a Christian, and in the Bible it is said, Heil belongs only to Christ. Nobody can be hailed on earth.
Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil!
Monday when I came to school, my teacher called me up and he said, here is a paper. You have to go from class to class with this paper and have it read by the teacher and signed by the teacher.
Volk sein und ihr, meine Jugend, soll dieses Volk nun werden. Ihr könnt nicht anders sein als mit uns verbunden.
And you know what was written on that paper? We give the following warning. By the end of this week, this person has to make a decision. Submitting or leaving school. Because we cannot allow a rebellious child to be in school. Underneath has to be brought from class to class by the child Simon Arnold. In the middle of the week, my teacher said, you come home with your mother. We went to his place. The name of the teacher was Zipf. He was a Baptist. He talked with Mother a long time, and he said to me, look, I fully agree with you. I don't hail Hitler either. You look at me, you know, I do it with the left hand, not with the right. I don't give my support with the right hand. I do it with the left hand, and I pray to God and said, you know, my heart belongs to you. This is just to keep my freedom. Do it like I do. I said, I can't. For me, it's a lie. I cannot lie.
Heil Hitler!
Heil Hitler!
So Saturday, when I came to class, came my school teacher and director of the school, the principal. So the principal went on with a wonderful, typical German talk. Germany is a country of freedom. Germany gives the choice to anyone for the future. And when he went through his speech, he said,
Mein Lehrer hat mich darauf aufmerksam gemacht, dass einen Schülerin sich weigert, einen Aufgaben nachzukommen. Sie erhielt ein Schreiben von mir und hatte bis heute eine ganze Woche sich zu entscheiden. Der Heil Hitler großes Pflicht. Niemand kann ungestraft bleiben, wenn er sich weigert zu grüßen. So ein Schülerin sollte ein ausgestoßen werden. Wenn die Schülerin sich weigert, Heil Hitler zu rufen, muss sie sich durchaus stehen zu erkennen, geben. Sie müssen nicht vertreten und herkommen.
In a normal democratic society for Jehovah's Witnesses, who know that they have been told to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, unto God what is God's. They are very law-abiding, but they're very clear that their king is God and not any earthly state. So when the pressure really comes on in the Third Reich and everybody is told to say Heil Hitler, which really puts Hitler at the highest point in somebody's life, to have compulsory military service, to swear on oath, then witnesses refuse to do this. They are not able in their conscience to be able to put the rule of an earthly state above their God. So very quickly they come into conflict with the police and the authorities and are watched and then arrested and increasingly thrown first into prisons and then into labour and concentration camps, largely on these grounds, refusing to undertake military service, refusing to give the Heil Hitler salute, and refusing to be part of the Nazi pageantry.
Your ill treatment of Jehovah's Witnesses shocks all good people of the earth and dishonours God's name. Refrain from further persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses, otherwise God will destroy you and your national party.
Deine Zukunftsperspektiven stehen auf dem Spiel. Ruh erst freiwillig. Dein Leben, du Eline, trägst du vor der Verantwortung. Wenn du mich grüßt, hier sind dein Papier, deine Gläser. Da es aber ein entscheidendes Leben ist, gebe ich dir eine letzte Chance, die richtige Wahl zu treffen. Ich gebe dir 5 Minuten.
What comes over very clearly throughout Simone's story is just how tough it was for her and for people like her. She was 7 when her family and she left the Catholic Church and became Jehovah's Witnesses.
Even in my family, all my family turned the back on us, you know, my grandmother, everybody, right away as soon as we became witness, you know, because of the Catholic Church's teaching in those days. It was, I would say, almost like middle age. You know, when you were pitch-pointed, you know, being not like the others, there was no possibility of them to understand why you changed. They just thought that changing is being a traitor. So they acted like that, you know. You were cast off by your family before ever the Germans came on you. So we had already that feeling of being like soldiers, you know, fighting for what we believed was the truth. In 1938, we got a book from Switzerland which is called Crusade Against Christendom. And it gathered material from concentration camps in Germany about Jehovah's Witnesses. It gave details. It even had plans of the camp, the procedures the Gestapo had on Jehovah's Witnesses. It was a very clear statement about concentration camp life before the war, because the witnesses were the first one to be arrested with the communists already back in 33, 34. So by the time of 37-38, they had gathered material and sneaked it out to the Swiss border and had it published. We knew that the Germans had put a ban on Jehovah's Witnesses in Germany. You could get arrested if you had a single little booklet of Jehovah's Witnesses to go to camp. When you had the Elberfeld Bible, which has the name Jehovah in there, they called this a Jewish Bible. The person who had that Bible could be arrested with no trial whatsoever.
The witnesses appeared to have been one of the few groups, as a group, as opposed to individuals, who recognised what was happening and were willing to speak out against the Nazi ideology. So, for example, in one of the journals at the time, the Golden Age, I think it's a 1936 journal, there is a very, very interesting set of cartoons. National Socialism is this cartoon, and many other stories cleverly say in Watchtower and Awake and the Golden Age at the time, persecuting Jews, corrupting youth, stilling the voice of truth in the general sense, as opposed to in the kind of faith sense, and persecuting witnesses. And then there are books, particularly the very famous book called The Crusade Against Christendom, which identifies early on what is happening to the witnesses.
Put his representative Hitler in control, a man who is cruel, malicious, and ruthless. He cruelly persecutes the Jews because they were once Jehovah's covenant people and bore the name of Jehovah, and because Christ Jesus was a Jew.
From that day on, we went underground. We had our meetings underground, and we got our watchtowers and the material to study the Bible underground. And my father organized this underground work over the border. And with my parents, I did go once in a while on that underground part to get material to come over the border. French material had to be translated into German and copied and sent to Germany. So as soon as the Germans came there, we were already organized. I was at my grandma's place. My mother had sent me over there because she was afraid that in the city we wouldn't have any food. And from my grandmother's place you could see all the churches in the valley. I saw on the city hall the French flag, and on all churches, all of them, the swastika. As soon as Paris was taken over, all the churches got the swastika out.
From the very early days of the annexation of the area that she lives in, the children, her friends, her great friends, she'd been a popular kid at school, are asked to stand to salute the Nazi flag, to sing German songs, sing the anthem, and particularly on every greeting, so simply to the teacher when they come in the morning, to raise their right arm and say Heil Hitler. She thinks long and hard about this. She, for a few times, she just kind of tries to hide herself and, not be seen, and then decides she can't do this, she won't do this.
So the Germans got organized, you know, their way of thinking. We in school, we got Hitler teachings, you know. The Nazis were teaching evolution. And they used that evolution to create their theory. In the beginning, mankind was on a very low level. And some have made efforts and efforts and efforts and efforts and have come up as Aryans. And the other ones haven't made those efforts. So they stayed on a lower level. Because in evolution, it's the strongest one that comes over the weakest one. You have to fight against anything which comes across and doesn't permit this Aryan life to grow. Now, I had a Bible schooling at home. And in the Bible, you have compassion that does not exist with Nazis. I had a sufficient understanding how wrong it was to go along Nazism. There was a time my father would come home from work. And I opened the door, jumped on my father's neck to kiss him, and suddenly behind him, somebody said, "Heil Hitler." And when I looked on the man I had kissed, it was a Gestapo. Saw their mother on a cross-examination for 4 hours. They wanted to get the names of all the witnesses, and they wanted to get to know the underground activity. She was smart, she was fine, you know, she had something in her, and they couldn't get anything out of her. "You won't see your husband anymore, never." And mother was there and calmly said, "This does not depend on you, this depends on God. And in the future I will see him." Father worked as an artist in that place. The Gestapo went in the factory, in front of all the workers, called him up and said, "Are you one of the Bibelforscher Jehovah's Witnesses?" My father said yes. He said, "Come along." That's it.
Now, there is a major difference between the witnesses and, let's say, Jewish prisoners. Jewish prisoners had no option. They were there because of their race, because of their birth, because they were seen as less than human. They were seen as subhuman and were there to be exterminated. And nothing they did, no good behaviour, nothing they said would buy them an exit. Jehovah's Witnesses were different. They were arrested because they chose to have a particular faith and to stay with that faith, first of all. And secondly, I think uniquely, I believe uniquely, of any group, they had a fairly easy way to get out. There was a document called a declaration, and if you as a Jehovah's Witness in a camp or in a prison were willing to sign this, it was a very simple statement which said you renounced your faith and you would not practice it anymore, you could be released. And when you think about it, you know, outside were your family, your friends, your life, and your own life. You know, the risk of death was very high. Very, very few witnesses signed that piece of paper. The expectation from the Nazis was that everybody would just get out, and even would get out and still practice their faith. But witnesses felt if they'd given their word, they would stay by their word, and they couldn't give their word to that promise that they would give up their faith. So very, very few, a couple did, but very, very few ever bought their way out, although freedom was there for a signature.
Wie grüßt du mich, Heil Hitler? Das Bild der Führersorte. Du wirst entlassen und musst gehen.
Heil, Sieg, Heil, the whole class. I was standing there, you know, my fingers were like that. And I was determined. I said, I want those papers. Those papers. During the 5 minutes, they sounded like hours. My head got like this. My feet got small. I got cold and shivering. But the only thing I had in my mind, I want those papers because I want to hail my Lord.
This is London calling. Here is a news flash. The German radio has just announced that Hitler is dead. I repeat that. The German radio has just announced that Hitler is dead.
The penitentiary center, when you left Konstanz, it was the spring of '45, and your mother came to the camp.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't recognize her. And at what point did you finally realize it was her?
Well, and there was sitting on the table a woman I did not recognize. Thin, worn out, who didn't go up, who did not greet, just looked at me. She had had an accident on the road. She had a crushed face with several kinds of colors on the face, you know, because they had nothing to clean up the wounds. So she had black and red and all kinds of, and green, you know how it is when you get hurt. She didn't say a word. I didn't say a word. Then she turned around and she said to the teacher, "Can I take her with me?" She said, "No. She's here with a court case. I cannot let her go. I need the papers." She said, "Can I go and get the papers for her?" Well, she said, "You may try in the court case." So we walked down to the court case. We didn't speak, she didn't speak, I didn't speak, you know. We came to the court case, and when we came there, the judges were gone. Everyone was fleeing in front of the army. So Mother started off asking for my freedom. And when I saw this lady fighting to get me out of the place, I realized it was my mother. And I started off crying and crying and crying and crying. All the tears I had been holding back for 2 years, they just were flooding out. But when we came home, Father was on the death list. We were waiting for him, and suddenly it appeared on the race course out of Arnold, missing. Death. And one day, the barber's wife came. She rang the door, the bell. I went opening the door. I said, "Maria, what are you doing here?" She never came in weekday anyhow. She said, "Simone, I'm not alone. Your father is here." Do you know what Niemöller said? Niemöller was a very well-known pastor, Protestant. He said, when the communists were taken, I was not there. When other people in Germany were taken, I was not there. When the Jews were arrested, I was not there. And when I was arrested, nobody was there for me either. And when he came out from the camp, he mentioned Jehovah's Witnesses, and he said, if we would have had that stand, many things wouldn't have happened in this country. And I think that's it. You know, when you think it over, if only the religious people would have said, no, the first commandment, and the second one doesn't allow you to go into war. They all claimed to be believers in those days. There were not so many atheists like today, you see. They all claimed to be believers. And yet they did not stand up toward it. So you cannot say God has forsaken his people. It's not true. It's the people who have forsaken God.